Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. It started with a spoon. A single metal spoon clinking against a ceramic mug at 6:43 in the morning. Not a sound you'd normally remember, unless it's the only sound in your house for 11 days straight. She stirred her tea like I wasn't there, like I hadn't been sleeping next to her, like we hadn't shared a decade of inside jokes, random road trips, and whispered apologies. I stood behind her that morning, just a few feet away, and I swear I've never felt more distant from a human being in my life. She didn't look up. She didn't speak. And I didn't ask. Because by that point, I already knew. The silence had shape now. It had rhythm. It had routine. We had entered this strange performance where we moved around each other like ghosts, silent, polite, and painfully aware. I used to think cheating came with fire, passion, explosions, screaming matches, and slammed doors. But no one warns you about the kind that creeps in with a whisper. No one tells you that betrayal can look like routine, that it can wear your hoodie, sip your coffee, and scroll through her phone in the same kitchen you built together. That morning, she left her phone screen up for the first time. It lit up the table when she walked into the bathroom. And I, like an idiot with a pounding heart, looked. It wasn't a name I recognized. Just a message. I missed the way you listen. I stared at it. The irony? I've been listening for weeks. Listening for anything. A sigh. A cough. A single damn word. But it wasn't me she was talking about. The kettle whistled. I didn't move. The bathroom door opened. She came back in, didn't notice I'd seen it, or didn't care. She sat down, took a sip of her tea, and started scrolling again. That was the moment. Not the message. Not the cheating. But the way she sipped that tea like nothing mattered. Like I didn't matter. So I left the room. Then I left the house. Then I left the marriage. Quietly. Just like she taught me. I didn't check into a hotel. I didn't run to my friend's couch or call anyone to vent. I drove. No destination, no playlist, just the sound of tires and my heartbeat trying to outpace each other. Every mile between me and that silent kitchen felt like oxygen. But when I finally pulled over at a rundown gas station near a truck stop 2 towns away, I sat there in the car, hands still gripping the wheel, and just stared out into nothing. I wasn't free. I wasn't brave. I was just broken in a quiet, stupid way. Like a chair that looks fine until you sit on it, and the whole thing collapses underneath. I thought about turning around. Honestly, I did. I thought maybe this was just one of those low points. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe she was just dealing with something she hadn't told me. But the message kept echoing in my head. I miss the way you listen. She used to say that to me. Not exactly those words, but the meaning. Back when we still talked about things that weren't bills or weather. Back when we stayed up late on the porch talking about books she never finished reading and places we never visited. Somewhere along the way, I became white noise in her life. The kind you don't notice until it's gone. Later that night, I checked my phone. Not a single message from her. Not a missed call. I left my ring, my wallet, except my ID, my charger, everything except the clothes I wore to bed and the spare shirt I kept in the trunk. Still nothing. That silence told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't worried. She wasn't confused. She wasn't even curious. She was done long before I left. But I wasn't ready to accept that yet. So I made one mistake. I checked her social media. She hadn't posted in days, which wasn't unusual. But her close friends' stories, the ones I wasn't supposed to have access to, were visible. Probably an oversight. Or a message. Or maybe both. In one video, she was at some cozy-looking wine bar downtown. Laughing. With a man I'd never seen before. She leaned in. He touched her wrist. I froze the frame right there. I studied it like a puzzle, like maybe if I zoomed in enough, I'd figure out how long this had been going on. Weeks? Months? Maybe longer? But the part that truly messed me up, she looked happy. Lighter. Like someone who hadn't been carrying around the dead weight of a husband she no longer loved. That realization hit me harder than anything else. She had already moved on emotionally. All this silence. It wasn't a punishment, it was the phase after goodbye. I just hadn't been informed. I shut off my phone. I sat in that gas station parking lot until sunrise, watching truckers come and go, watching people live lives that didn't include betrayal and quiet heartbreak. I envied them. I envied the simplicity of not knowing what it feels like to be erased without a word. That morning, I made a choice. I wouldn't go back. Not to beg. Not to fight. Not even to scream. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of watching me unravel. If she wanted silence, she could keep it. but I'd give it to her on my terms. So I drove again, this time further, this time with purpose. And somewhere on that endless road, I finally realized I hadn't just walked away. I'd vanished. I ended up in a roadside motel off Route 82, the kind with neon signs that buzz at night and carpets that smell faintly of old coffee and lost time. The woman at the front desk didn't even look up when I paid in cash. I was just another man with tired eyes and a bag too small for a real plan. The room was cold, the sheets stiff, and the lamp flickered when I turned it on. Still, it felt like more home than where I came from. At least here, silence didn't feel like judgment. It was just silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blank TV screen, and thought about the man in that video. The way Junie leaned toward him, the subtle ease in her posture. She looked like someone who had already grieved what we had and buried it without telling me. It wasn't rage I felt. It wasn't even sadness. It was this weird, dull ache, like realizing a song you used to love now plays, and you feel absolutely nothing. I used to think losing someone meant some grand explosion, some big scene. But no, sometimes it's just watching a person drift away while you stand still, too scared to ask why. That night, I kept the curtains open. I wanted the highway lights to flicker across the ceiling, like movement meant I wasn't stuck. I didn't sleep much. I kept rehearsing what I'd say to her if I ever went back. But every version of the conversation ended with her looking bored. Or worse, relieved. The truth was, I didn't want to go back. Not because I was strong, but because I couldn't take another second of pretending I mattered to her. Around 3 a.m., I got a text. My heart jumped like a reflex, hoping it was her. It wasn't. It was my bank. A charge from some boutique store I didn't recognize. Then another from a restaurant downtown. Same one as the wine bar. My name was still on the account. She was out, shopping, celebrating, living. And here I was, sitting alone with cracked wallpaper and a vending machine that ate my last dollar. It hit me then. She hadn't reached out because she wasn't wondering where I was. She knew exactly where I wasn't. I wasn't in her way. I wasn't interrupting her freedom. I had become the easiest part of her life to remove. All she had to do was stop talking. No screaming. No explanation. Just silence like a clean eraser swipe. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror for a long time. My eyes looked older. My mouth hung like it forgot how to form words that mattered. I whispered, "She doesn't love you anymore," and waited for some part of me to argue back. Nothing came. Not even a tear. Just that flickering motel lamp buzzing like it agreed. The next morning, I woke up feeling like my skin didn't fit anymore. It's hard to explain. The air in that room was stale, but I knew the suffocation wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from the silence I carried with me. I hadn't spoken to anyone in 2 days. It's funny how fast isolation can start to feel like home once you've been practicing it inside your own marriage. I sat on the edge of the bed with my shoes in my hands, not even sure if I wanted to leave the room, not even sure where I'd go if I did. My phone was still face down on the nightstand, untouched since the bank alerts. I hadn't powered it off, but I hadn't dared look either. Because the truth was, I didn't want to see a message from her, and I didn't want to not see one either. Both possibilities hurt. Both screamed, just in different tones. Eventually, I opened it. Still nothing from Junie. But something else caught my eye. A calendar alert. An anniversary reminder I'd set a year ago and forgotten about. Anniversary dinner reservation. 6:30 p.m. at the Birch Room. It was tonight. I almost laughed. Not the kind of laugh that makes you feel better. The dry, hollow kind that reminds you how far you've fallen. I had planned a reservation months in advance. Booked the same place we celebrated our 3rd anniversary because she once said she liked how the waitress remembered our names. Back when that sort of thing mattered. I thought maybe, just maybe, this dinner could be the reset button. Even with all the silence, I had still been hoping. But now, I couldn't even remember the sound of her voice. I sat in that room all day thinking about that empty table, wondering if she'd show up out of habit, wondering if she'd bring him. And then a darker thought crawled in. What if she forgot entirely? I couldn't sit with that. So I got in the car. I didn't drive home. I didn't even drive toward town. I just drove, letting the turns come at random, until I ended up outside a small antique bookstore. One of those forgotten places tucked between a diner and a dry cleaner, the kind with dusty windows and creaky wooden floors. I went in, not for books, but for noise, something, anything to distract me from the spiraling pit in my chest. But while I was pretending to browse, I overheard an old man at the counter talking about a clock. He said, "You don't notice time's passing until you hear it stop ticking." That line clung to me, because that's exactly what my marriage had become, a clock that quietly stopped, while I was too busy pretending it would wind itself again. When I finally left the store, I walked to the parking lot and sat in my car, staring out at the street. And for the first time in all of this, I didn't feel sad. I felt numb. The kind of numb that usually comes right before something changes forever. I didn't go to that dinner. I didn't call her. I didn't check if she did. Because now I knew something I hadn't been willing to face until that moment. This wasn't about her silence anymore. It was about mine. I never thought I'd say this, but disappearing came easier than I expected. You'd think walking away from an 11-year marriage would feel like cutting off a limb, but instead, it felt like slipping out of a jacket that had been weighing me down. No tears, no regret, just this strange emptiness that felt a little too much like relief. I checked into a cheap rental cabin just outside a small town called Grayson Ridge, a sleepy place with more deer than people and barely enough cell service to check the weather. Perfect. The silence here was different. It didn't carry judgment. It didn't echo betrayal. It just existed, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. But quiet doesn't erase memories. If anything, it makes them louder. The next morning, I found myself scrolling through old photos I should have deleted a long time ago. Junie's smile and that beach picture from Oregon. Her curled up in the passenger seat, pretending to be asleep while sneaking fries from the bag. That stupid selfie we took after painting the hallway, covered in specks of white, grinning like idiots. I should have known something was wrong when she stopped letting me take photos. At some point, she stopped documenting moments with me because she'd already started imagining a future without me in it. Out of morbid curiosity, I opened her social media again. She hadn't blocked me. Another oversight or another signal. I no longer cared which. What I found gutted me in a way I wasn't prepared for. A post. Recent. A photo of a cappuccino with a chocolate drizzle and a hand across the table. His hand. Not mine. I knew it by the watch. Sleek, expensive, modern. The kind of thing she used to call too flashy back when she still told me her opinions. The caption read, "Sometimes silence speaks volumes." It wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. I sat there in that creaky wooden chair, staring at the screen until it dimmed and locked. That was her confession. That was her version of closure. A poetic one-liner to the world that confirmed what I'd already suspected. She wasn't just done. She was rewriting the narrative. I wasn't the man who quietly walked away. I was the man she had outgrown. Silently, stylishly, and with just enough cruelty to make it seem wise instead of heartless. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went outside, stood barefoot on the cold wooden deck, and just let the early fall air bite at my skin. I needed to feel something. Anything. Because inside, I was fading. That night, I wrote a message. Not to her. She didn't deserve it. To myself. A kind of closure. I typed it out on my phone's notes app and read it aloud like a prayer. You waited. You begged. You listened to her silence until it became your own. And now, you choose yourself. Not to be louder, but to finally be heard. I hit save, locked the screen, and set the phone down. It was time to stop chasing ghosts in old conversations. It was time to stop looking for her in places she no longer wanted to exist. It was time to start walking forward, even if I had no idea where the road led. The strangest part of starting over is how ordinary everything looks while your world is quietly collapsing. People still wave when they pass. The grocery store still stocks your favorite cereal. Strangers still hold doors open. It's surreal, really. Like the world doesn't care that your life fell apart in complete silence. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe heartbreak isn't loud for anyone except the person living inside it. 3 days into my stay at the cabin, I realized I hadn't spoken a word to anyone in person. Not a single conversation. The closest I came was a nod to a gas station clerk when I bought coffee and a pack of mints I didn't need. I started to wonder if I was becoming the very thing I hated most, silent. Maybe Junie's silence infected me like a virus, spreading into every part of my life I didn't protect. That night, I found a small notebook in one of the kitchen drawers. Yellowed pages, half-used, the kind people forget exists until they need to jot down a grocery list. I didn't plan on using it, but I kept glancing at it, the way you look at something and know it wants to be something else. So I opened it and wrote at the top of the page what I never said. I didn't think. I just started writing. Things I wanted to say to her, but never did. Not because I was scared, but because I foolishly believed some things didn't need to be said out loud. I wrote about how I noticed when she stopped asking me to go on walks. How I pretended to be asleep when I heard her crying in the bathroom, thinking maybe she'd come to me when she was ready. I wrote about the dreams I never shared with her because they didn't seem to interest her anymore. And then I wrote about the day I stopped believing I was enough. That one stung the most. I kept writing until my hand cramped, until the words turned messy and the paper tore in spots. Then I flipped the notebook closed and left it on the windowsill. I didn't know why, but it felt right. Like something had been removed from my chest and placed on a paper. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the start of understanding. The next morning, I woke up to an email. Not from her. From a lawyer. It was a polite, professionally worded message explaining that Junie was initiating a no-fault divorce and asking if I preferred electronic or in-person service. My heart didn't race. I didn't feel a wave of panic. I just sat there, rereading the words like I'd found the final page of a book I didn't realize I was reading. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cruel. It was clean, efficient, and utterly devoid of emotion. Exactly like her. And that, somehow, hurt worse than anything. She hadn't even asked where I was. She hadn't sent a message, not even a cold one, asking if I was okay. I was a name in a legal file now. That's when I knew this wasn't about love lost. It was about love discarded. She didn't mourn what we had. She deleted it. I walked outside, notebook in hand, and tore out the last page I had written. I folded it, held it over the fire pit, and let the wind tug it away before I could change my mind. Let her have her silence. I was done speaking into a void. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from anger. Not even sadness. It was something else, a strange kind of clarity that settled into my bones like cold air before a storm. I sat at the table in that creaky old cabin, the divorce email still open on my laptop screen, and stared at the words until they blurred. Not because they were hard to read, but because they were too easy. It shouldn't be that simple to dissolve 11 years of marriage. It shouldn't take fewer words to end a life together than it takes to order dinner online. But there it was, laid out in legal terms. Clean, efficient, painless, for her. I poured myself a cup of the terrible instant coffee that came with the cabin. I didn't bother to stir in sugar. The bitterness felt appropriate. The silence of the room didn't press in on me the way it used to. It just sat beside me like an old acquaintance. One I'd stopped being afraid of. Something inside me clicked into place, not in a dramatic, Hollywood epiphany kind of way. It was quieter than that, like the sound of a drawer softly closing. I realized I didn't want her back. Not because I didn't love her, but because I finally understood she hadn't loved me for a long time. She loved the idea of stability. She loved what I represented. A man who wouldn't question, wouldn't raise his voice, wouldn't make waves. And for a while, I played that role. Willingly. Proudly. I thought being easy to love meant being easy to live with. But somewhere along the line, I became background noise in my own home. And now, she was rewriting the story like I was the one who disappeared. Maybe in her version, I'd been distant. Maybe she told her friends I was emotionally unavailable. I wouldn't be surprised if she painted herself as the one who tried while I checked out. That's the thing about silence. It lets people fill in the blanks however they want. And I had given her nothing but blanks to work with. But not anymore. I opened the laptop again and began typing. Not to her, but to the lawyer. I declined the in-person service. I didn't need that awkward ceremony. I'd already accepted the ending. I requested everything be done digitally, clean and fast. But before I hit send, I paused. My cursor blinked in the message window, like it was waiting for one last word. And I gave it one. Agreed. That was all. I closed the laptop, stepped outside, and for the first time in weeks, felt the weight of it all leave my shoulders. Not entirely. Not forever. But enough to make me realize something deeply unexpected. I wasn't broken anymore. I was bruised, sure, but not shattered. I was still standing, still breathing, still capable of starting over. As I stood under the porch light, I thought about how Junie once told me, "You're the kind of man who disappears too gently." Back then, I laughed, took it as a compliment. Now I see it for what it was, a warning. And this time, I wouldn't disappear gently. I wouldn't disappear at all. It's been 2 months since I left. The cabin stay turned into a rental in a nearby town, and that rental eventually became something more permanent. It's quiet here, but not the kind of quiet that suffocates. It's the kind that lets you hear yourself think again. I wake up early, walk to a small diner that knows my name now, and sometimes I even laugh when the waitress calls me Big City. I never realized how loud my soul had been screaming until the silence finally became mine again, and not hers. The divorce went through smoothly, just like she wanted. No mess, no drama. She didn't ask where I was, didn't check in. The last email I received was from her lawyer confirming the finalization. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That chapter didn't deserve a period. It deserved to be closed quietly, the way she opened the door to silence and never looked back. But here's the twist no one expects. After all that, I'm okay. Not healed completely, no, but growing. Stronger in small ways. I started going to therapy, not because I was broken, but because I finally understood I mattered too. I found a rhythm again. I picked up photography, something I hadn't touched since college. Funny how grief makes you revisit forgotten versions of yourself, looking for pieces that still feel alive. Last week, I walked past a bookstore window and saw a display titled, Voices We Almost Forgot. I stood there longer than I probably should have, staring at the title, realizing that's exactly what I had become in my own life. A voice I almost forgot. But not anymore. I don't hate Junie. That's the part that surprises people. She gave me closure in the most brutal way possible. She showed me what life looks like when someone no longer chooses you. And in doing so, she left space for me to choose myself. Now, I wake up without checking my phone first. I go on walks and don't feel the need to explain where I'm going. I buy flowers and don't assign meaning to who they're for. Sometimes, they're just for the kitchen table. Just for me. And that's enough. If you're still stuck in someone's silence, if you're still sitting in that invisible corner, waiting for acknowledgement, please hear this. You don't have to stay quiet just because they stopped listening. You get to speak. You get to leave. You get to begin again. I did. And it saved me. That's the end of this story. But now it's your turn. What's one moment in history, personal or global, that completely changed how you saw the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story meant something to you. You've been watching Reddit Confessions, where real stories find real voices.